Hello, hello, good afternoon. This is the Night Owl Show number 10, and with me I have Mark Sargent. Mark, hold on, and there you are.
Hello.
Hello, Mark. Really
Hi.
great to have you on.
Happy to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Yeah, I'm really glad you took the invite. I never really reached out much to people to have them over or anything. I don't know why. It's just that I was been like too nervous, like I'm a nobody, like who cares? But I mean, reached out, you got back to me immediately, so that was pretty kind of awesome.
Well, David and I both got back to you, and the biggest reason is you have been there. You've been there with us for quite a while. I mean, I've been doing this 9 years, and you've been there
Yeah.
as long as I can remember on the European side.
Right, yes, since
So
2016. That's when I
yeah.
started my channel, and before that, it was you, man. It's all your fault.
Well,
You
not
just had
all.
to research that flat Earth, didn't you? Had to try to
Yeah,
debunk
I
it.
mean, it's not just officially for the record. I'm going to give credit where credit is due. It wasn't all me, but I did have a lot to do with it. In the beginning, there were three of us. There was Eric Dubay
Yep.
out in Thailand, who was doing some of his early work, I think, in 2014. Me, oh, I'm sorry, Matt Boylan,
Right.
otherwise known as Math Powerland, who actually just made a video yesterday, which is so weird. It was so weird seeing him, and he
Huh.
has not changed a bit. I initially thought he was in Central America running a harem of something. That was his ultimate goal, was to like set up a compound filled with beautiful women that would be massaging his toes. And then me doing my stuff in the beginning of 2015, and it again, here we are, for me anyway, 9 years later, books and a Netflix documentary, and I don't know how many interviews and conferences and just fun stuff. And it went by so fast, but wow, we have accomplished a lot to where the system and everything in it, social media has adjusted to us. I have never, I'm sure you observed it too, I have never observed a single aspect of the truth community that the powers that be, that I call the authority, reacted to so much. And so, I mean, not to the extreme point where they were hunting us down, but they tried to muffle us as much as possible in the digital world.
Right.
So yeah,
Yeah,
it's
they
been a heck of
did
a ride.
like really try to, how do you say? It's like they tried to like take care of us without mentioning us basically. Because there was, of course, during the time already InfoWars and all that, and they had a lot of response and they would be mentioned and all that. But then Flat Earth kind of like moved in, and then everybody was just like, "Oh, there's this flat Earth out there, but we don't want to talk about it though." But we kind
Yeah,
of
yeah,
have to a little bit here and there.
they were in a tough spot
Yeah.
because, as any producer will tell you, it doesn't matter whether you love or hate a topic as long as you're discussing the topic. And so they were trying to stunt us. I don't know if you remember going all the way back to 2018, when we were just ripping up the internet. And there's some wonderful videos I put out recently where one of the lead developer for the YouTube recommendation algorithms had put in, they went automated about the same time we came on a line. And what was happening was the automated system, it was a simple routine which said, okay, we're going to send random topics out to different people and see recommended for you, and see if they click on it. And if they click on it, how far do they go? And they realized that the average person that got into flat earth for the first time watched 20 videos in a row, which is insane, because some of these videos can run a couple hours. And in that process, they create a binge topic. YouTube is the biggest network in the world. It's not Netflix. It's not Disney Plus. It's freaking YouTube. There are thousands of lifetimes worth of content out there, and we were
Yeah.
cranking it up so much that by 2018, they realized what they had done. They had promoted flat Earth so shamelessly, deliberate or not, that they didn't hit the brakes on us because it would have been too obvious, but they took the foot off the gas. And they said, in a special Senate hearing, which is also on my channel, where they said, okay, we're going to recommend flat Earth less. And they were not kidding. The monetization process, if you know anything about that, they cut it back by almost 3/4, by 75%. I remember there were people who were contacting me, like Rob Skiba and others, and like innocent phone calls would be like, so do you notice you're making a lot less money on YouTube? It's like, yeah, man, that's a quiet way of stunting us, is paying us less to make content.
Yep, downgrading. Lots of it.
But it was still a lot of fun. And again, it's not going anywhere. The greatest thing about the internet is things stick. And with every platform, I mean, come on, there's kids nowadays, Gen Zers. The Gen Alphas really haven't come on board yet. They're not old enough. But the Gen Zers, through TikTok, we're looking for content. Sorry, go off on a quick little tangent. You probably have already heard the rumors over here, but in the Western countries like the UK and United States, 1 out of every 3 kids, and that's not an exaggeration, 1 out of every 3 kids think that they want to become a content creator as their profession when they grow up. And as anybody knows, it's like, look, there isn't enough audience for that sort of, you can't have millions and millions of kids all of a sudden coming on and creating content and thinking they're going to, become influencers over this. So what they were doing is grabbing any already established content. And because Flat Earth was just out there everywhere, they started grabbing it and putting it on TikTok. And then we took those videos and compiled them and put those back on YouTube. And then it became cyclical.
Huh.
So, yeah, so much fun.
Right. So, yeah, it is spreading everywhere. I think that Flat Earth, in a way, has become kind of a common subject. There's still a lot of, feelings that get in the way. I mean, it's really... the time when Flat Earth was really new and nobody knew about it is really over. It was kind of over 5 years ago, but now it's just really over. And what remains is... the people that want to talk about Flat Earth or recognize that that's real and that there's so much still to discover and figure out, and the people that really don't want to know about it, and they just want to try to reinforce the heliocentric narratives, including those that have been blatantly dispelled, requiring to correct for Coriolis deviation when you're using a sniper rifle. I mean, everybody knows that's nonsense. Yet some people out there, prominent figures, they still mention it. They still try to maneuver it in the conversation.
Yeah, the anti-flat Earth channels, and you know them about as well as anybody. But the big ones out there, the big two, Simon Dan and Professor Dave, who is not a professor. They and all the smaller channels below them are dedicated to going against flat Earth, and they will never flip, because their audience demands it. The first rule of entertainment has never changed in 1,000 years, which is give the people what they want. If you develop an audience that resonates because you hate flat Earth and your audience hates flat Earth, you will never, even if you want to, you cannot flip, because you will lose that audience.
Right.
And so these guys, it's positive reinforcement. And so, I mean, again, people say, oh, wouldn't it be great if all the troll channels, slipped and fell on 5 or 6 bullets? I'd be like, no, because again, they generate metrics. In fact, just this week we had Simon Dan put out a new one. Professor Dave put out a new one. He hadn't been doing it for at least a year, and he makes a flat Earth video. And so his videos were getting 7,000, 9,000, 11,000 hits. Makes a flat Earth video. What's it at right now? 560,000 hits. Right? And again, when you see that happen, you're going to do it more. He can't escape it, even if he wanted to. But yes, you're right. The novelty of flat Earth, people being surprised by flat Earth, that's gone. That's forever gone. Now, of course, there's kids, like anything, rite of passage, where you're going through middle school and high school. When they get to a certain age, they're being introduced to flat Earth for the first time, and they're making TikTok videos. There are always going to be small waves of those kids, but the initial media surge, where tons and tons of mainstream media people were acting like it was this big shocking thing, that's gone. That's gone. Everybody that's in it now, the lines have been drawn, the camps are there. We're still recruiting more and more. The best thing about again, social media is it doesn't go anywhere. As long as your channel's up there or whatever platform you're on, it just keeps amassing and amassing and amassing. Kind of like, I hate to use the comparison, but it's kind of like porn. Which is like, even old porn is out there. It's not going anywhere, right? And it just keeps, the volumes of it just keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So same thing with Flat Earth. The Flat Earth stuff that I made 9 years ago, still there. Eric's stuff that he's, everybody, as long as you keep up, your stuff updated, and that mass of, that helps the metrics, and eventually will just lead to more and more people coming forward and coming out of the closet. Remember, most of our members are still in the closet, still to this day.
Right. And but yeah, I totally agree. But it's more like this, because of this format of being on YouTube, and there basically be a video of everything you do, and it stays there. It does this extra effect even more than, for example, television could have ever done, and that is have an open record of people's development, so that anybody can literally just check you out and just see, like, time interval based check every half a year a video, just like, hey, what are you looking like? What do you like? What is he talking about here? How does he describe these arguments? And you can really now just check people's development.
Yeah, and it's all time stamped.
Yeah, exactly.
So which is why people have asked me for years, do you people have accused people. It's like, oh, has Flat Earth ever been infiltrated? And I go, I don't know how you do it, because if you went in, if you tried to co-opt Flat Earth and be, a shill, a co-Intel pro guy, you're already in the timestamp realm. So you can't just come out of nowhere and be popular, right? You can't. We have never seen someone come into Flat Earth and make Flat Earth content and all of a sudden get millions of subs for no reason, and then go off road and turn Flat Earth in another direction. You got to remember, the highest sub count we have. We'll just use YouTube as an example. I think the highest sub count we have right now is like ODD, and he's got what, 300K? Okay, that is embarrassingly low. And I've heard this from a number of mainstream YouTubers. Is like, you guys, the whole Flat Earth community should be way higher than they are now. I go, well, not if they don't. The powers that be have the ability to keep you, to put a ceiling, put a cap on things.
Gated. And they just gate you off.
Yeah, I've been sitting at I've been at 105,000 subs on YouTube for at least a year now. At least a year. It's like, how is that freaking possible? David, what's David at? David's like 106 now. Oh, it's scary how low.
Yeah, and David really gets around. Like, he knows how to get in people's faces. He should be, subscriber-wise, just skyrocketing just for the familiarity that he's created. And
he's done.
And look at my channel. It's like, I've been doing this every day. I have over 2,000 shows. This is insane. And I just barely have 3,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Well, everyone's heard the term shadow banning. When it comes to software, I come from the software world, everything is possible. And if you want to stunt the numbers, if you want to keep people pressed down to where come on, for example, my channel isn't verified, right? Once you hit 100,000 subs, it immediately clicks into another level of YouTube, and they try to get you sponsors, and you get a dedicated tech rep and stuff like that. And they even told me, because I almost lost my channel a while ago. They said, hey, you should apply to be monetized again, right? Because I was demonetized right after the pandemic started. And I said, okay, fine. YouTube asked me, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to apply. And they came back and they basically said, I will never be monetized.
Oh, ever. Really? So you're not monetized?
Again. Yeah, because no, I haven't been monetized for a long, long time. And which is ironic, because YouTube were the ones that contacted me directly back in the day when I was monetized. And in fact, I was monetized right up until about, I think, 6 months into the pandemic. And then I started saying, as you know, we'll be delicate here.
Mm.
I started saying things against the WHO and the CDC on our side, but mostly against the WHO. They have now superseded everything else in the world. And I said, look, I don't think what's happening with these mandates and all the shots and stuff, I think there's something fishy there. And they came in, and not only did they knock out like a whole bunch of videos in the front end, they went into my back catalog, and they got, I do a podcast every Tuesday called Strange World. They wiped out an entire year worth of videos on Strange World. 52 videos, a whole calendar year.
Wow.
On YouTube because of that. And so, yeah, they weren't kidding. But before the mandates even started, and there's a wonderful clip on my channel, about the Senate hearing when they decided to crank us down, take our volume down from a 9 to a 3. It was done fairly easily. And I mean, come on, Karen B, my co-host on my channel, she's one of the biggest female channels in Flat Earth. She's say at 15K. And yet you can start up a movie reaction channel, and if you're even halfway decent, you're going to have 60K within a few months. So, which is what all the kids are doing nowadays, by the way, reaction channels.
Yeah. No, they definitely gatekeep us all the time. It's like they just put this slider on. I think it's just like they use pretty advanced algorithms for YouTube and Google and like how they do it, and it's like more advanced than they let on. And they basically just put that slider on, and suddenly we don't really get recommended by newcomers anymore, or to newcomers. And it's just that, people will have heard of us, but the numbers don't reflect it. I mean, I myself, I got a channel of nothing, but a lot of people just know that I exist and that I am here, and it's like just 3,000 subs, and that's it.
Yep. I mean, when I type in Flat Earth into YouTube right now, by the way, very interesting that if you're an again, it's not lost on me. Flat Earth, really tough to get verified. To get a check mark next to you in YouTube. Anti-Flat Earth, as soon as you hit 100K, boom, you're in. You're part of the club. Professor Dave. By the way, if anyone thinks he legitimately has 3 million subs, you're high on freaking shrooms, because he used us. I mean, by the way, he should be sending us a freaking fruit basket every year for Christmas, because the only reason he got 3 million subs is because he used all the Flat Earth hit money from YouTube, and he ended up buying all those subs and then churning it back in to where, again, I remember, and he went from 2 million to 3 million still pretty fast. I watched him on a podcast. I think it was the debate where he went on with Dave, right? That was, oh God, it was so horrible. And I remember listening in the background, and the podcast said, oh yeah, this is one of the biggest subs we ever had on this channel, Professor Dave with 2 million subs. I'm going, what the hell now? 2 million? When? Since how possibly, no.
Just buying into it. But I mean, Professor Dave is obviously an anti-flat earther, and anti-flat earthers, argument-wise, are so backed in the corner over the last few years. I mean, there's been so many technical developments in like how these argumentations work. We figured out that terrestrial refraction scam, autographic view, how they abuse it, excluding perspective, all these other things like celestial navigation, and they're basically just backed in a corner, and they have to spend a lot more effort argument-wise to just try to hold it off. Then we need to basically point out the fundamental flaws in their argumentations. And all they have to do now, or what they seem to be doing right now, is just really use the peer review angle and just say like, no, but I got way more subscribers. So it's all logical as far as I'm concerned that he would buy all those views, because it's like, oh, he needs to be way more popular in his own view just to uphold some confidence in the face of flat earthers.
Right. And for the people out there that don't understand what I'm talking about, when it comes to, I'm going to give you a brief history of this. And by the way, if anyone has never seen, most people, you probably haven't either, if you've never watched the documentary called Fake Famous, Watch it. It is brilliant. It is about the culture of social media, not to be confused with The Social Dilemma, which is also a great documentary, but Fake Famous, where they took six kids that were nobodies in Los Angeles, and they said, okay, we're going to make you fake famous on social media for doing nothing. And what I mean
is
by
that on YouTube, by the way?
I don't know if you can. You probably have to pay like $1 or $2 to watch it on YouTube. But look up, see Fake Famous documentary. See if you can buy it on YouTube. Right. I know you can buy it on Amazon. I think it's free on Netflix. But it is absolutely worth it. But right. here's the premise behind it. And this goes all the way back to the gaming days. If any of you gamers out there, there's something called in-game currency, right? Which is currency that's only used for your game and nothing else. Warcraft was a great example of this. Warcraft Gold. What happened was there were Asian and other countries outside. We'll call it offshore countries that were farming Warcraft Gold and selling it back to the Americans, right? And then when social media came out, somebody came up with this brilliant idea, which was, wait a minute, what's the difference between farming Warcraft Gold and farming likes and hits and subs for a social media account? Nothing. In fact, it's even easier to do than going into a game and possibly getting caught. And so what they were doing, it's like, wait, can't we just farm likes and hits and subs for the Americans? And maybe the American kids will buy it. And they absolutely were buying it.
Yep.
One of the PewDiePie was one of the first, actually, and one of the heaviest. And all sorts of celebs do it. But there's a line, I don't want to go off-road too much with this, but there's a great line from the movie, which he goes, because I don't use Instagram. And he goes, on Instagram, there are millions of kids out there with at least 100,000 subs, right? Well, there's only like 10,000 famous people in the world at any given time, and that's a stretch. That's including all athletics and all forms of the art. Who are all these famous people? There aren't that many famous people. They don't exist. They're all phantoms. They are kids that realize you're not anything until you have a sub count, and so they just go out and when all the kids buy them, and everybody knows they're buying them, but again, it's fake street cred, and it's just right.
Emperor's clothes. It's the Emperor's clothes effect, and now everybody's buying these Emperor's clothes because that's how you get anywhere. That's how you get status. Right?
Yeah, why wouldn't you? I ran into a group I remember in another country, and younger guys, late teens, early 20s, and this was a few years ago, and I asked them about PewDiePie, right? And they said, oh, he's totally legit. I go, why is he totally legit? It's like, oh, because he's got, at that time, he only had like 30 million subs, which is ridiculous nowadays, right? And it's like 30 million subs. So because he has 30 million subs, he's totally legit. It's like, yeah. Kind of like, I hate to compare it to, let's segue into a different guy briefly, which is money is also a street cred. Doesn't matter where it comes from, and it doesn't matter if it's even completely real. It could be inflated, much like Elon Musk. I have lost count of the amount of people that think that Elon Musk is one of the smartest men in the world. He's equivalent almost to like Tony Stark from Iron Man. And it's like, why would you think this? And they can't even tell me. It's kind of like defending the globe, the David Weiss's personal thing where he says it's amazing how many of the globe people don't even know their own model, right? You ask them, it's like, oh, how fast the Earth's spinning, how fast it's going around the solar system, how fast the solar system traveling. They don't know any of these things. And I go, well, then why are you defending it? You don't even know your own model. Why are you defending it? People defend Elon Musk to me all the time, and I go, how do you make his money? They can't tell me. All they know is he's the richest man in the world, and which means he must be a genius. He must be the smartest guy ever. It's like, no, you have no freaking idea. And in fact, I predicted this a few years ago, and it's come true already. Which is, I go, you wait. When he had bought Tesla a little while back, I go, you wait. A few years from now, people are going to think he invented Tesla. Doesn't matter that he didn't invent Tesla. He owns Tesla, therefore he invented Tesla. It's like, no. I mean, that's what, sorry, side note, look up, there's a wonderful movie out there called The Founder with Michael Keaton about the guy that bought McDonald's. A guy named Ray Kroc built it bought it years ago from the McDonald's brothers. The name didn't just come out of nowhere, and he franchised it and he turned it into this massive thing. But he let he just made sure the McDonald's story was pushed so far back that no one even cared. So his name's everywhere, and memorialized. Well, I'm so glad they made the movie about it because it made him look like a jerk. Anyway, sorry, I ramble.
No, that's excellent. I love all that extra information. You're very resourceful and researched, so it's part of the reason why I really appreciate you and your shows. I mean, I'll never forget all those times. Great times when you and Patricia Steer were like doing a regular show. And I learned so much from those shows.
And thank you for bringing that up because, well, one, if you guys ever want to watch Patricia and I, those shows are still on my channel, even though she burned down her channel for various reasons. They're still on my channel. However, the rumor is, I've heard a rumor because I've seen her in the chat rooms, is that she's coming back.
Yeah, finally. I heard that. Yeah, this summer even. Yeah,
I was kind of hoping it would be in April or May. I don't know how long she's gonna put it off, but it'd be great. We've talked about this many times and different things, which is she's one of the few people, not just because of the documentary, but she could walk into any of the conferences, just walk in, and she would be embraced with open arms. And I guarantee a pretty big chunk of the audience would know who she was, and the whispers would get out there. It's like, Patricia's here, Patricia's here. Yep. So, and still to this day, she did one of the finest interviews I ever saw. Let me tell the backstory on this really quick. When she and I went down to, I was going to do a segment with National Geographic down in Los Angeles, and she came with me, and Jaron was supposed to be there. Rob Skiba was already there. Jaron was supposed to be there, and CBS Sunday Morning with Jane Pauley was supposed to interview Jaron. Jaron flaked out, whatever reason, doesn't really matter. And the producers came over to me. He's like, look, we don't have anybody. Who can we talk to? I go, well, Rob Skiba, the guy being mobbed over there. Rob always drew tons and tons of attention. I loved, doing stuff with Rob because I didn't have to worry. Rob was doing these great things. And they said, no, we can't. We don't want to talk to Rob because he's too churchy, church and state. And it's like, we don't want to delve into religion. I go, I get that, mainstream media. I go, talk to Patricia. All right. And they sit down with Patricia, just impromptu, just sat her down, no hair and makeup because she's always camera ready. Sat her down on a picnic, table, and they filmed her for 40 minutes straight, and she never wavered. She was freaking bulletproof, and the segment that they used in the show was brilliant, and it outraged the audience, the CBS audience, so much because it's an older audience that they wrote in and they pulled it. They pulled that segment. Not only did they pull it from the YouTube, right? It already had 1 million hits, within a week. Not only did it get yanked from there, but it got yanked from their website archive. I was like, wow. What? So I kept it on my channel. And it's still out there now, and it is. Did you ever see it?
I might have. There were so many videos back then. You guys probably linked it up and showed it. But
I'll find it. I'll find it for you, and I'll paste it in here just so you can have it.
Oh, excellent! Yeah, I will definitely check that out. But I mean, back then, it's so funny. Like around that time when Patricia was still very active, it was still like this in-between phase where people were getting more familiar with Flat Earth, but where still the old guard was just so confident, like, yeah, but they're getting their time. All the Flat Earthers, we're so gracious with free speech, that we'll allow them to talk, but then they wouldn't accept, like, if we were actually victorious in any argumentation, and they'd all get very outraged. Now they're like, kind of aware that actually does happen, and so they're much more careful with like what they actually let on. But back then they just thought like, a flat earther, we'll just get him on and defeat it quickly, right? They thought that they could do that, and it would fail like horrendously for them.
Oh yeah, the mainstream was notorious for, like anybody. Why wouldn't you? They would try to sleepwalk their way into any interview. One of the best ones I ever did was with the now late UFO guy Stanton Friedman, And I remember we did it on True Frequency Radio, and he came in, and I knew he had flown in, and I knew he wasn't going to do any prep work. I knew it because he was like, "Oh, flat Earth." Again, everyone, like you said there, everybody thinks, "Oh, it's so dumb." I could be half drunk, coming out of a coma, and I could still beat them in a debate. And after like the first 10 minutes, he stops me, right? And he goes, "Wait a minute. You're talking about flat Earth like it's literal, like it's a real tangible thing." He goes, "It's not a metaphor." He goes, "I thought it was a metaphor for something." I go, "No, man, it's real." I go, "All the world's a stage. You're living on it." and I hear this pause on the other side, and he goes, "Well, how does that work?" And it's like, oh God. And so then it wasn't a debate anymore. Then it was more of an instructional, because I had to walk him through. It's like, oh, okay, here's what kind of we think, and here's the different camps and all this. And
right, they were expecting the Flat Earth Society. They were expecting
Yes.
a controlled, confined, self-containing conversation from like, oh, they'll talk about Flat Earth, but they won't really get so serious. They won't actually impose it upon the world. That's what they all seemed to be expecting back then. So strange. I mean, they did just like an inkling of background research on the Flat Earthers. They would know that that wouldn't happen.
Right.
But they didn't do that.
Nope.
For years they didn't do it. I mean, it kept happening over and over again. It was crazy.
And the smart ones, we probably lost a whole bunch of interviews in the tail end of that surge, because there were a lot of producers that realized the on-air talent that they had, whoever was going to be hosting the show, wouldn't be able to keep up with whoever was doing it. Which is why I firmly believe, like, Austin Whitsitt does not get a lot of interviews, because when you listen to him, you realize it's like, oh yeah, the host of that show will not be able to go toe to toe with him. Will not happen. And you don't want that, right? With any producer, it's like you want to make your guy look good. You do not want to have him walk in and get blindsided. And so I was really glad to see, I don't know if you watched it, when Austin went on against InfoWars.
Yeah, I definitely watched that.
And he was way more restrained than he normally was. He wasn't his normal attack dog mode where, he was making the other side almost in tears because with a combination of vocabulary that he would use that they didn't understand, or the fact that he was thinking 3 and 4 arguments ahead of them. And because he pulled back, I think that was a great long-term thing, because it made him come off not much of a jerk, right? It was like, oh yeah,
he was being very amicable, but a lot of points kind of just slipped by. So he just like let them do whatever they were doing, and eventually they kind of just started to get all bravada-ish. And Alex walked in and was like, "Yeah, see, I looked through a telescope. It's a sphere," that kind of thing. And it was kind of, the whole thing, to be fair, I thought it was kind of weird. I mean, it's good that there was some exposure, but I was kind of disappointed at how little actual flat Earth argumentation he put forward, and mostly stuck to just geocentric arguments versus heliocentric arguments, which is kind of interesting. And he was correct about that. But I thought he could have done more. But maybe he just thought, like, if I do more, they'll never have me back or something. I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, I agreed with it. He played the long game. I'll give you another example. When I did years ago, which I couldn't put on my channel for copyright reasons, I did a British morning show with Piers Morgan. And
you did?
Yeah, I did.
What?
Yeah.
With Piers Morgan? Whoa.
And yeah, I did. I did a thing with Piers Morgan. And what happened was, but I couldn't put it on my channel. In fact, nobody could put it on their channel. You can only put like the audio. And we were trying for years. In fact, if I dig it up nowadays, I wonder if I could probably grab it. If you mirror it and put a giant watermark over the whole thing, you might have a chance, right, of doing it. That's what I did with a Comedy Central thing recently, where I watermarked it and reverse imaged it, and I could actually put the Comedy Central, because if they even see 10 seconds of the clip, they'll just say blocked. They don't even strike you anymore because it takes too long. They'll just say auto block. If you find your content, just auto block the thing. Anyway, so I did a thing with Piers Morgan. And they told me at the last minute that Terry Virts, one of the American astronauts, was going to be sitting next to him in the studio. I didn't even know. till that morning. And I was coming in via Skype. And I caught a little bit of hell for it from the community back then, because I didn't attack the astronaut as heavily as I could, right? They kind of like Austin, where like, they said, you must attack, and I go, you really don't understand how things work when you get to a certain level. When you get to things at a certain level, you've got a producer with his finger on a red button. And he is going, I mean, it's not a literal red button, but you know what I mean, where he is waiting, he will cut you off in 2 seconds, and you know what's going to happen. It'd be like, I'd be in the middle of me yelling, right, rah, 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 and all of a sudden, we seem to have lost Mark.
Yeah.
Well, we'll try to get him back after the break. And then
cut to commercials, and in the meantime, you're getting dragged out by security.
Yeah, like, on video call, I'd just be cut off, and they would never reestablish communication. And I've got a producer in my ear the entire time. He's in a second channel that I am listening to. So the point there is, it's like, look, my goal when it comes to the big ones is to go the entire segment. Meaning if they allot me for 9 minutes, that's what I want to go. If I can go over, great. You never want to be cut off early. And the reason is, and Whitsitt, I think, knew this, is that because producers talk to each other. The hosts don't give a crap, right? The hosts just want to make sure their hair looks good, right? The producers, they're the real power. And if you have one producer calls another producer, it's like, hey, how was Mark on your show? Oh yeah, he was really great. You should think about getting him. And I got a lot of stuff that way, right? Producers talk to producers. But the flip side goes the other way, which is, oh, how was Mark? Oh, that guy was a dick. It's like, you absolutely don't want him, and then you don't get to do anything. So yeah, Austin, I thought he played it as smart as he could have, and you watch, he'll get on some other things now because he showed restraint. Unfortunately for Austin, 100% Austin, not going to be able to work with the big stuff because, again, the hosts are, I mean, you've listened to him,
right? Yeah, if he gets too direct and too powerful, then it'll humiliate the host. And that's why, if you insist on doing that, you're not going to get invited. Like, if you insist on giving the full game hardcore, well, then you're not playing the media game, basically, which is really all about friends and finding a what do you call that? A consensus, a middle ground, right? That's how they do it. And if you like insist on just bringing your A game, then they'll be offended. Unless they're flat earthers too, right? Right.
If you want to play chess against somebody and they're really good, it's okay, right? You can take a beating, that's fine. But you never want to play chess against a guy who's calling his moves, like calling a shot on a pool table. He's calling his moves ahead of time. That's really upsetting for a lot of people, which is like playing chess where it's like, okay, are you going to move your bishop there, and I'm going to come over with the knight, and then you're going to try to counter with this, and then about 3 or 4 moves, I'm going to have you pinned in the corner. And then what are you going to do? You're going to have nothing. He does that with the flat earth versus the globe arguments, right? He'll be like, well, okay, first you're going to come with a straw man fallacy, then you're going to do an ad hoc on me. Then you're going to do a double reverse vampire fallacy, and then a double decaffeinated half cap fallacy.
Right, and he knows all the fields perfectly. So it's like, oh, you switch this argument. Oh, I know everything about that. Oh, you're going to switch quickly to that. I'll have some. He has good information ready in whatever's brought up. I have to agree with that. I've seen him in action full on, and he is very competent when he needs to be. Absolutely.
I am. Let me end the Austin thing with this, which is, I am so glad he is on our team. Because I would, if he was an anti-flat, we've never run into that, of course, because the globalists don't have anyone on that side it's that sharp. Besides, the arguments are so weak. What tools could you possibly use?
Yeah, he wouldn't be as powerful if he'd be an anti-flat. He'd be just annoying and somebody who just overtalks you, like most anti-flat earthers are. Right? Because that's all they have. Yeah. That's all they have available to them. You can try to be smart, but if your argument just doesn't work, you can present it as smart as you like, you're going to fall through. Because people just know how it works now. The flat earthers know the arguments. They've heard every argument an anti-flat earther has ever brought, and they can just dissect it. I mean, it's almost like dissecting a frog or something in biology. You just know exactly what you're going to be finding in there every time.
Yep. Yeah. In fact, nowadays, it's like you said, the surprises are all gone. And come on, trolls, if you're listening out there and talking globalist trolls, if you haven't found the silver bullet to knock flat Earth out by now, 9 years later, well, you're not gonna. In fact, I could have said that 5 years ago, and you still wouldn't have had anything. So the arguments. In fact, I haven't run into an original question. I'm so tickled, by the way, when I do an interview and somebody comes up with something I hadn't heard before. It's like, oh wow, I hadn't. They're nothing. They're not great gems of questions, but at least they're original. Whereas nowadays, seriously, I try to do an interview every once in a while just to make sure I don't get rusty, because David's now up to, I don't know how many freaking interviews he's done, 1,500, 1,600, something like that. It's ridiculous. I mean, he's done, which is great. I'm again happy that he's doing it. I can't wait to see what comes up next.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, a weird recent development that I've taken notice of with anti-flat earthers until I kind of dropped dealing with them overall because I just kind of get bored with it. And I know how they work now psychologically, and I'm just getting kind of tired of pointing it out. And I'm like, what if I just try to focus on just speculating about what is out there that we don't know yet, and how could you figure it out with not having everything yet, so that you can basically sort of anticipate what you're going to run into once you go actually check it out, or somebody in the future might do that, right? So that's what I'm focusing on. But one of the more recent developments in the anti-flat earth camps and all those weird online astrophysicists and their YouTube channels is that they're now leaving the flat earthers just completely out of it, don't even address them anymore, but instead they're now trying to be smart by doing what I've named confessional debating. And that is basically they roll out their conception, like some astrophysicist conception about gravity or whatever, and then as they start talking about it, they point out all the flaws, honestly about it, and then end up basically in a dead end where everything they said basically testifies yeah, it actually doesn't work.
Right.
And then they just stop on that. It's just this gravity, it's absolutely brilliant, and look at all the development, and yeah, there's issues though, and it doesn't really work here and there, and then there's this different opinion about it, and then suddenly they switch in their research, and and in the end, you don't really have anything except for, well, it would have to be there.
Yep.
And that's what they tend to do now. It's confessional debating. It's really weird. Have you ever taken notice of that?
I have. In fact, I've come, because I come from the video game world. I used to play games for a living, was a video game producer, and I have never believed in NPCs more than when I wake up every morning now. Because NPCs, if you don't know the term, it's non-player character or non-playable character, but it's a character you run into the game. I was there when they were first invented back in the day.
There's movies about it now.
Yeah, well, yeah. Free Guy was actually a pretty interesting thought. However, it only, on a side note, it bugged me that the term AI was, because AI back in the day, back when we started out, AI, there was a reason why Steven Spielberg made a movie called AI, Artificial Intelligence, was AI meant self-aware, right? Sentient being. And that's not what it means anymore. Now AI is just a complex series of software packages that interact with each other. Now you have to basically say self-aware or sentient. So when you get a movie like Free Guy, which I did like, by the way.
It was a good movie.
I thought it was fairly amusing because, again, I love the whole NPC concept. It's okay, NPCs that have some sort of free will, right? That they're breaking out of this thing. The problem is, and people have criticized me for it, and I say, screw you guys. The self-aware cannot happen until we have the ability to define ourselves, meaning what defines the human soul, right? And who are you? What I think therefore I am, or it's not just as simple as that.
How about what is self-awareness? Like, what is that? Like, we can describe it. What the hell is it? And what separates it from all the other traits that we have and that are measurable? It's
exactly
so complicated. Like, we still don't know really officially.
Right. And if we can't even define it ourselves, right? And even if you could define it and lay it all out, who's going to write the code for it, right? And turn it into machine code, right? Okay, fine. Even if you had the most wonderful philosophical mind, you could define, here's what I am, know thyself, right? And then you figure that out. Okay, fine. Program that now. Now, it's never going to happen. The two are, by the way, almost mutually exclusive because programmers are almost entirely mechanical. But let me get back to the original thing, which was there's a wonderful movie done some years ago called The Imitation Game. With Benedict Cumberbatch, about the godfather of computers, whose name was Alan Turing. He was a British guy. Go figure.
The
British
Turing test.
Yeah, exactly. The Turing test. He made the first computer back in the 40s to defeat the German Enigma machine, right? The German U-boat coding machine. And it was, fairly simple by our terms, but it was the first computer. And then afterwards, they closed the whole thing down and classified it because they're like, well, the general public doesn't need computers, so we're just going to classify it. And then decades later, we reinvent the computer, right? The modern computer. Well, he came up with the Turing test because, again, great mind. Even back, because he created it in 1950. He said he immediately thought, it's like, wait a minute. If we can program anything in computers, eventually computers will have the potential not to become self-aware. That's why where he came up with the term the imitation game. It was weird. The movie had nothing to do with that term. In fact, the Turing test wasn't even in the freaking movie. But he goes, the closest we can ever get is an imitation, meaning even if you could program all the subtle responses to everything and fool somebody on the other side of the table from you into believing that you were human. Again, multiple movie references. Blade Runner. The whole concept behind Blade Runner was the Turing test. In fact, I don't even think they called it the Turing test in Blade Runner. But you ask the computer a series of questions to trip them up because you are more developed and you can think more as a soul, quote unquote, a soul, than a computer, right? It's never going to happen. Sorry, last thing. I know I'm going off on a tangent. I'm throwing a lot of different things at you. Just in the movies, when it comes to computers that become self-aware, there's only three things that ever happen to do this. Either a lightning bolt strikes the circuit board, some sort of radioactive goo strikes the circuit board, or a ghost or alien entity possesses the circuit board. Right. That's it.
Yeah, like Short Circuit. Short Circuit is one of the first movies, very basic. But lightning.
By the way, that technically counts. Lightning bolt or any sort of electrical accident. So yeah, short circuit, or in some cases they don't even tell you. It just happens. Like Skynet, great example. Skynet, it became self-aware. How did it become self-aware? Doesn't matter.
Yeah, but it's so logical. Just think about it. It's just like all this activity, and then suddenly there's a critical mass of electronic switching and activity, and then it just becomes self-aware somehow. Whatever self-awareness actually is, which we still don't know.
Computers only do exactly, totally only what you tell them to do. Yep. They just don't bust out on their own. And it's the equivalent of being, I'll give you a simple example. It's like the equivalent of a player piano. You know what those are, right? You set up the spindle and the piano plays by itself on a roll of paper with holes in it, right? A player piano that's playing Beethoven, that all of a sudden it's going to start playing Kanye. Right? Just out of the blue. It's like, no. The spindle is what the spindle it is. It has no way of breaking out of that border that it's in. No way in a million years could it ever do that.
Unless it was given a Kanye spindle that it could switch to, right? It would have the choices would have to be programmed.
But the point there was that a human being had to create the Kanye spindle.
Right. Exactly.
And a human being, and even if you could get a computer, a person has to be able to come up with a technology to switch spindles. The computer will never come up with something completely on its own. It will interpret things on its own. And I know, again, AI has been thrown out there with different art. Yes, yes, we've now come up to the bit, like you can create AI music in a matter of seconds, right? And it actually sounds, you could have taken, one of those music tracks, go back in time 30, 40 years, and you can actually have a top 10 hit nowadays, right? But it's because it's referencing all the stuff that's the content.
Right.
The content has become so huge out there that now we have programs that can like bit and parse it all out. It kind of reminds me.
Recombine it. That's what I've been saying about all this AI and the Chat GPT is like, oh, self-awareness is like, oh, it'll replace creativity. No. What it'll does is it'll leech of all the creativity that's out there and just easily, quickly recombine it way faster than any human could recombine and plagiarize other people's work.
Yep.
And that's what it does. And it's it's gonna recycle the same supposed optimal stuff that people have this optimal response to over and over again until people get sick of optimized products. Yep. They'll get sick of it. I mean, I'm already sick of like the mainstream music industry for like 10 years at least. Like every time I hear any kind of song, I immediately hear, this is a mainstream song. This has been refined to all hell. So that it just makes me sick just listening to it because it's like, it's so predictable. It's like nothing unexpected happens anymore in it, ever.
New music's dead.
It's boring.
It is homogenized. I mean, you could blame it on all sorts of things. I blame part of it on the early auto-tune from the 90s.
Right.
When
it's like pasteurized milk, right? Regular milk, super healthy. Pasteurized,
You know what it's kind of like, and you'll get this. It's kind of like BitTorrent taken to the nth degree, because BitTorrent was all about grabbing the pieces, but you knew what you were going to get in the end, right? You were grabbing pieces of the same thing and rebuilding it on your machine, but you knew it was going to be that particular song or that particular movie or that particular image.
Yeah, decentralized information transfer.
Right.
Brilliant.
This is now taking that, which is we're going to grab pieces from all over and then another software package is going to combine it and create something different, similar, but it's going to be different enough that. But like you said, when you listen to how many AI songs can you listen to before you realize it's like, wait a minute, this is starting to all sound like the same thing. Kind of like with autotune, where people started using autotune. You can spot it really, really easy. Sorry, but last thing on autotune. The thing that pissed me off about that more than anything else, and people will get this, which is it gave rappers the excuse to sing now, which is rappers which would usually just rattle off, some slow motion lyrics. It's like, oh no, let's put a melody track behind it, and it makes them seem like they're singing. It's like they're not singing. But you don't know any different because it sounds like the auto-tune from all sorts of different people. Ugh.
Right, but auto-tune has been a terrible influence on the music industry, in my opinion. It pulled away the actual craft, which is a very complicated craft of being a singer, like actually being able to sing well. Yeah. It's really difficult. Like even the best of singers have their off periods and all that, where it's just like, tough. It's really tough being an actual good live singer. And what they did is basically take that entire industry out of their hands and just give it to whoever wants the fame the most. And that's a terrible development. Yeah. Terrible.
And again, the irony, you know the history, of course, the irony that it wasn't even created by the music industry. That's the part that pisses me off. It was created, if you guys don't know, by oil and gas. By just freaking happenstance, because an oil exec that specialized in sound, ground penetrating sound, to look for oil, when he retired with all sorts of money because he was brilliant at software, and his niece says, hey, I can't sound very good. Can you make me a sound thing that can make me sound good when I sing? If he hadn't have said, all sorts of uncles would be like, give me another drink. They wouldn't care. He'd be like, yeah, I think I can pull that off. There we are. He made it, and then and even then the singers weren't on it until I think it was Cher. Cher did that, do you believe in life after love? And she had that little bit of warble in there, a little bit of auto-tune in there. And it was enough of a hook that all of a sudden artists started grabbing it, and then Kylie Minogue grabbed it, and T-Pain, Then it just took off to where now it's
Right,
like
it's like they started with it like a synthesizer, a modification,
right.
as a piece, as like an artful twist to it. But I
Yeah.
mean, these days, this is just like entire singers. They just like completely auto-tune everything, and you don't even get to know how well they can actually sing. They might
Nope.
sound like complete asses
Yeah.
when they actually sing. You will never find out.
Yeah.
And they do it. There's live auto-tunes and everything, so even on stage, these people could just do that.
Yeah. The NPC thing, by the way, circling back to the flat Earth stuff,
Right.
because we got off the track, which is the NPC thing. What I mean by that is the globalists and the trolls. And sorry, guys, you're NPCs. I could give you. In fact, I even came up. I'm not going to say it on air. Maybe afterwards, I'll send it to you an email. I came up with my own NPC test. You do not need 100 tests or 100 questions in Blade Runner or 300 questions or whatever it is. I mean, I boiled it down to 5. So most of the trolls are NPC, and I know this because they short circuit. In fact, it's a term we've been throwing out there a lot recently, which is like you said, they get to a certain point, and then they just freeze up, and they have to switch to a different topic. Where you've got them dead to rights on whatever it is. Whatever.
Right, and they can't maneuver anymore within their ground that they hold on to. They can't maneuver.
No. And so instead of saying, you got an interesting point there, I should look more into it, or maybe you got something, there's maybe some validity. So they're like, well, what about sunsets and the horizons? Like, wow. I mean, you can watch them do it. It's like they're there, and all of a sudden they just pivot without any apology, and it's an awkward segue. And again, it's a short circuit.
Right, they go into a tantrum like a 6-year-old all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And they all sound the same too when they do it. Yeah.
They do, which is why I like one of my go-tos, which I throw out there quite often, is gravity versus the vacuum of space. And anyone's listening, you can do this to a globalist all day long, and you watch. I've seen it in chat rooms, I've seen it live. It's always the same thing. It's like, tell me what happens at the bleeding edge of space. Tell me what happens when our atmosphere ends and space begins. Tell me exactly what happens. No scientist, no troll can tell me. They pause, and then then they start talking about something else. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to need an answer on that. And then they won't even give me an answer. They just keep pivoting. It's like, again, watching an NPC in a game, and I'm a gamer, where you try to get them to do a thing. Nope. They're always, it's like a Wreck-It Ralph character.
Right. It's a really difficult subject because in reality, most globe believers, not the anti-flat earthers, but globe believers, they really don't know, because what happens there, what the anti-flat earthers have developed, is a remodeling of how physics work, right? They use the fluid system. Have you ever figured that out? You must have heard of that.
No, throw it at me.
They basically say, okay, we're not going to treat gases like gases anymore, which expand in all directions to fill the available volume and then pan out within that available volume, however that's going to happen. But instead, they are acting like liquids and are going to form layers. And that's how they see it then. That's like the only compatible piece of reasoning that they could find that would still allow Newtonian mechanics to keep the gas to the ball, is by treating the gas like it's a liquid and it's going to lie on top of the more dense liquid. So there's like the water rests, then there's the gas that rests on that, and then there's the thinner gas, right, the helium and the hydrogen that's way up there, and it is the least dense gas, and it's going to sit on there like a layer, and then after that it's just nothing, right? It's because there's no more gas to sit on top, and then they just like, yeah, we're just not going to address that it's actually gas that's going to fill the available volume. Like that's how they do it, the fluid system. They just think of it as a fluid.
That is ridiculous.
It is ridiculous, absolutely. Ridiculous. But this is the only direction that they can take. But yeah, if you then address like, excuse me, but gas might be a fluid, but it is definitely separate from liquid, and it is going to expand in all directions. And then they're really stuck after that point.
There was a physicist, it was a younger woman, probably in her young 30s, that I ran into when I was talking about, okay, what happens, where our atmosphere. Sorry, I'll give you the standard pitch. You probably heard this one, but I got to throw it out there. This is for the trolls, which is what the gravity versus the vacuum of space. And again, most of the people in the flat Earth community, it's all about long distance photography, which is great, fine. But there's enough arguments against it that the waters get muddied. They start, everyone throws in refraction, everybody throws in this, or again, they'll just throw in a Lake Pontchartrain photo just to mess things up for a while, which is ridiculous.
Convolution,
but,
yeah.
Yeah, but for me, it's always been the gravity versus the vacuum of space, and I said, okay, what happens the vacuum versus an atmosphere? Sorry, good, the mail trucks here. And she goes, well, it's just there's so few particles, kind of like layers. There's so few particles when it gets in this vacuum that it hardly touches it at all. There's hardly any reaction at all, right? It's almost equalized. I go,
what?
That's not how it works. Here's how it would work. I go, I'll give you a great example, which is you take a box, like a cardboard box, with a little bit of packing popcorn in the bottom of it, and a little bit of tape on the bottom to hold the bottom, right? And you pick it up. What happens? Nothing happens, right? The packing popcorn is so light that the box is totally fine, right? Put the box back down. Put, 15 pounds of books on top of that packing popcorn. Now try to pick up that box. What do you think happens? The books push through the popcorn, the bottom of the box blows out, and you're left with a big mess on the floor. How is this relevant? It's relevant because a vacuum doesn't care about the density that's right next to it. It's going to equalize no matter what. And if there's something that's really concentrated atmosphere behind it, that's going to get pulled in with you. Right? It's going
to push in there technically.
Yeah,
right?
Everything's coming out, right?
Boom.
In fact, you're going to grab the heavy atmosphere, you're going to grab the light atmosphere, and because water boils at room temperature, right? You're going to probably grab the oceans too. The whole thing is a freaking mess. And they go, well, and then I combine that with, I go, fine, I'll give you the small example, which is you put a vacuum chamber above you on the second floor of your building right now with a valve, right? You pull that valve, what happens? It's instant, it's violent, the air will equalize in a fraction of a second. The air will rush upstairs, you might even get caught, your head might pop off trying to get up there. And I say, when you go outside, why is our atmosphere still here? And you know the answer to it because everyone says the same thing because there is only one thing, which is, because gravity. I go, you mean the same gravity that couldn't keep the air in your room from going up and upstairs, right?
Right.
That same gravity is holding on to the air right now, even though the vacuum chamber above here would be so immensely huge compared to that little vacuum chamber in there. But that's fine, and again, they try to justify it, then they short circuit.
Right, but they only, that even, again, that reasoning only works when you think of gases like they're a fluid and they are going to sit, and then they're going to be like influenced by gravity. In reality, there's no influence whatsoever, and the explosive force of gas pressure trying to equalize it within the available volume is in proportion to the amount of available volume. So imagine like how big this supposed universe is. It's Googleplex. It's so incredibly vast, and then this little tiny space on the supposed globe with like really thick pressure, like how much is that going to explode? It's going to be like the biggest, quickest, most violent, like so violent and instantaneous, like we wouldn't even have time with our senses to figure out what's happening. It's instantaneous, massive, explosive power.
The movies, and some movies have been ruined for me. Again, there's an old Mark Twain saying, which is never let the truth get in the way of a good story. Hollywood screwed up space a number of times, but because nobody's in space, everybody buys it. The ending of Aliens, the second one, where Ripley's crawling, on that ladder. She has a huge door exposed to space behind her, and the air is flying out at only about 100 miles an hour. And it's like, no. She's dead. She goes out. Little girl's dead. Marine's dead. Alien's dead. Everybody's dead in a fraction of a second.
Not only that, the entire ship would immediately wreck itself apart. Like if there's a tiny hole, then it would like really It's just the gas is gonna like go through and then just push the entire structure apart, just completely. Kaboom.
A submarine guy from the United States Navy told me something, and I didn't get it, but it was actually very, very good. He goes, submarines are really incredibly thick metal, right? Steel, layers and layers and layers. It's really, a very, very thick shell because of the pressure that's coming in from the outside. He goes, on the flip side of that, if you wanted to retrofit, and the Japanese did this in a couple of anime shows, including Star Blazers, which was if you wanted to retrofit something for space, you'd want a submarine if you could do it. If you had the ability to thrust something up there, some sort of unified field engine, because it would be able to withstand the stress from the inside going out. Meaning the pressure on the inside of the sub would probably hold that thing intact. And you're probably saying, okay, what's the point? The point is how's the ISS work? If a submarine can keep it all together, how's the ISS hanging in there with plastic and aluminum and maybe a little titanium, right? That thing should, and I've had a number of engineers said the same thing. It's like, oh no, the ISS would explode. We wouldn't even be close. It would just be there's no way it could even remotely hold up to the stresses of being in a vacuum.
But although how they've migrated the entire narrative about what's supposedly out there is they basically say, yeah, but it's really still well worth within the confines of the atmosphere. So it's not it's not a complete vacuum. So they basically make the difference between the pressure outside and the inside a lot smaller so that there's it's not going to explode. Sure. Like Don Pettit once said, like, yeah, if there's a leak, there's a leak. It's like, yeah, no worries. You just put your finger in it or a piece of gum or something and it's just fine.
Yeah. Which they have talked about over the years, and we called them out on it every single time. The ISS... come on, let's go back to the spacesuit. There was a video I made years ago called The Code of Credibility, which I basically call it. It was a challenge I put out there for at least 4 years. No one was going to let me do it. No one even suggested it, which was the spacesuit is one of the few, everybody knows. You can look this up on YouTube all day long. Anything in a vacuum chamber. I don't care what it's, football, basketball, volleyball, can of soda, whatever it is. Once you put it in a vacuum, if it's pressurized at all, it'll just detonate, right? There's only one object in the history of anything that doesn't turn into a parade float, doesn't expand until it explodes, and that's the spacesuit. And yet, when I ask anybody in science, and this ties into the vacuum versus the atmosphere thing, I go, what magical thing in the backpack of that astronaut is counteracting the vacuum of space? Tell me what it is. I don't care about heating and cooling and nitrogen and oxygen, although nitrogen is a whole nother thing we'll talk about later, which is what magical thing counteracts the vacuum of space. And even if you could convince me it's some microprocessor technology that equalizes it, blah, 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 in 2024, how'd the Americans do it in 1969? Yeah, remember, we've never had a spacesuit accident where somebody's died. It's never happened.
It just fills up with water and all that, right?
Which is, the Deep Water Training Center, which is a whole other thing. Again, the NPCs, I'd like to call them dumb, but they're NPCs. They're programmed that way. There's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
Which is, why are they training for space in a swimming pool where the pressure reacts the opposite way? Meaning, in a vacuum, right, the air is pushing out, right? It's coming in from the inside of your suit. It wants to get out. It wants to equalize with the vacuum. With a swimming pool, the water wants to get in. How in the hell are you trying to stress test a spacesuit in a swimming pool? And they say, well, it's the floaty feel. It's the floaty feel, that whole slow motion thing, because they have to keep the narrative similar to Apollo, to the Americans thing, which goes into a whole nother thing. It's like, wait a minute. Why are they in slow motion on the moon? If it's a 180-pound astronaut and it's 1/6 Earth's gravity, they only weigh 30 pounds. Like, oh, the suit's heavy. It's like, yeah, it wouldn't matter. Wouldn't matter. Their muscles, they'd be basically a superhuman. They wouldn't be walking in slow motion. They'd be fast all the time. There'd be feats of strength. Everyone thing would be incredibly light.
Yeah, they'd be like grasshoppers, basically jumping all over the place.
Yeah. Which they touched on in erroneously in what was that Mars movie with Emil Hirsch? It was a freaking Disney movie, something Mars. Anyway, but yeah, he was jumping. What you said, the grasshopper thing. He was jumping from place like a limited version, like the early Hulk movies. And like, okay, but we never ever saw that. We never saw feats of strength. They all moved really, really fast. And again, it was simple trickery, which was, come on, you can look it up online all day long. It's like or take any Apollo movie and just double the speed of it, and they look like they're walking around normally. Double the speed of the moon rover, the moon dune buggy that's running around. All you have to do is remove the sound and cut the speed in half. Oh, look at that. It's a moon rover. It's a car that makes no sense. Oh, I'm sorry. One more thing. I know you probably have a couple of more points. Let's run a little bit longer, but I want to get this point out, which is one of the little things that bugs me. There was one of our early guys back in the day. He's not doing as much stuff. His name was Max Malone, and I actually referenced him in the clues. And he goes, "Don't look for just the things that are obvious, that are there." He goes, "Look for the things that aren't there. Usually that'll give it away. Things that are missing because you're not looking for them because misdirection." Which was, do you know any scuba divers, Arwen?
Well, no. Not really. Well, I used to know a couple. Yeah.
You know the premise though, right?
Yeah, of course. I know how it works.
So you go, you're down underwater. One tank's nitrogen, one tank's oxygen. By the way, we're breathing in 80% nitrogen. It's a whole nother thing, which is where did we get all the nitrogen up on the space station or the moon mission? But whatever. So when you're in a scuba outfit, there's only one thing you care about. There's a big freaking gauge, like this oversized thing that you're constantly looking at, and that is how many minutes of air you have left, right? That's all they care about. Scuba divers are obsessive about it because, well, air is life, right? If you're down there, it's like, oh, we only got 7 minutes. We ought to head back up to the surface, right?
Yeah, but you have to time it very carefully because if you try to rush back up, you're going to die. So you have to be very careful with the timing.
Thank you. It's a good safety tip. It's called the bends, and you do not want to rise faster than your air bubbles because you've also got air bubbles in your body, and you don't want any air bubbles forming in your bloodstream because it won't kill you necessarily. Well,
it could if it happens enough.
It could, but it's really painful.
Exactly.
From what I understand. I mean, it is like one of the worst things ever, which is, by the way, probably one of the worst ways to kill somebody, I think, would be put them in a vacuum chamber, slow motion vacuum chamber. So here's the thing, right? Remember, the astronauts train in swimming pools. They're basically scuba suits. You know what we never heard when we were about the Apollo missions? You know what they never ever talked about? How much air they had left. Ever. Nobody ever talked about it.
They just had the giant tanker within that moon lander thing next to the Jeep.
That's fine. But what about when they were in the moon buggy way off? They drove that moon buggy a freaking couple miles away from that lander. And it would take them nobody ever said, "Hey, Frank, we only got like 12 minutes of air left. We should head back." No one ever talked about it. It was the most casual attitude. It goes along with the whole thing, which a number of people have commented over the years. It's like, wow, when you got to the moon, you'd be a lot more stunned, right? You'd be like, holy crap, we're actually here. You'd be paranoid about how much air you had left. You'd be paranoid about tripping and falling on a rock and punching a hole in your suit.
Yeah, that part definitely. But I mean, I think I remember that not on the moon, but like they were actually there. But before it, in like instructional videos, they did mention like every suit has like several hours of air. I don't know how they'd manage that, that it would be plenty and they would never really have anything to worry about and all that.
Well, which is a good point to make. However, even if you had several hours of air, you'd always be checking. And even accidentally, even inadvertently, you would mention it. It would be that inner narrative, which you wouldn't want to be in any sort of inner narrative on the moon. You'd be like, oh yeah, 38 minutes. You'd be calculating. It's like, yeah, we should be able to do that. We've got 40 minutes of air left, right?
They do it in space movies now. Like, where I'm out on the ship repairing. It's like, I got 45 minutes of oxygen left. I think it should suffice.
Yep.
They say it all the time now.
Movies did so much to fill in the gaps. Do not think it was an accident by any stretch that 2001: A Space Odyssey came out the year prior to Apollo 11. It came out in 1968. It was absolutely gorgeous, where a moon base has already been established. Like it was already been a thing. And that filled in subliminally a lot.
The space station, man. Like how they did that, like walking inside of the rotating, that was so brilliant.
That was brilliant. Again,
absolutely brilliant.
Jumping ahead of I mean, granted, yes, we of course had science fiction movies before 2001: A Space Odyssey, but that one was notable because it was very close to what we wanted to do. Our real space program, real being a relative term there, was already planning on doing some of those things, and yet none of it happened. I referenced one of my favorite sci-fi shows of all time, a British show called Space 1999. Which was done in the 1970s and only ran for 2 seasons, where a moon base had already been established, and there were a couple hundred people at this military personnel, of course, at a moon base in 1999. And this was shot in the mid-70s, right? Apollo was given up in 1972, but yet it was like, oh, well, they'll eventually get back to it. And they never got back to it. So here we are, 2024, and nobody's done anything, and everything is aged now to such a degree to where even the general public's having a tough time because, as you know, I mean, everything they try to release, like Artemis is such a joke.
Yeah, that footage, man, it's like, wow, you're really gonna use 9080 level graphics to show the moon, are you? Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it is embarrassingly bad. They've kicked the can down the road for at least 2026. And again, they'll keep kicking cans. Like I try to remind the kids. It's like,
but they can never stop kicking that can because in the meantime, in like Hollywood movies, the amount of scenes that I've seen, like, did you ever? I don't remember which movie it was exactly, but in one of them there was like a moon buggy race event. Where they're literally racing and somebody like goes after them and they like make jumps and shit and shoot at.
Right. I don't know.
Brilliant. Absolutely beautiful. And like, there's no way in hell that NASA could ever get even close to that level of like spectacle with it. It's like they could never manage this. They could never do it.
I keep thinking that they're going to they have to come up eventually with a giant distraction that will, I mean, granted, there's so many mini distractions right now. People have got all sorts of stuff to worry about, so they're not worried about what's happening with NASA and the Apollo program. We're watching it extremely carefully, but they still have not figured out, and I've said this for a number of years, I said, if you came to me, if the government pulled in right now and said, look, we'll give you couple $1 billion personal salary and then an unlimited budget, billions and billions of dollars, if you can help us fake the next human moon mission, right? I'd look at him and I go, sorry, not going to happen. I could
do it, but it would be very different though. It would, because how would you do it? Well, you completely modularize and compartmentalize it and make sure that no human through how it works would ever have to actually get out of the modules. It would all be self-contained and the robots would do all the outside work. It's the safest. And that way you could basically have like a Big Brother situation in space. And it would just be somewhere on Earth. And even to the extent where if you organize it well enough, the people that are partaking in it, they wouldn't even have to know it's fake.
That's not bad. And by the way, that reminds me of, if you guys want to look it up, there's plenty of documentaries on it. There was a television show some years ago. It was in the 2000s, though, called Space Cadets. It was a British television show.
Yeah, the British one, right? And they weren't in the know about it.
By the way, that was one of the cruelest. I am not a huge fan of pranks. That was one of the cruelest pranks. And it wasn't even designed as a prank. It was just like, oh no, we're gonna make the big finale, which was, if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, they did a casting call and they chose, I think, 4 or 5 of the most impressionable people they knew they could con, basically. I mean, not completely gullible, but gullible enough to where they pretended, they said, okay, we're gonna put you in a British space program, right? And we're gonna eventually put you into orbit for a little while. And they went through the training program, like Apollo 13 and all this stuff. And they were so excited and put them into a capsule, like you're kind of saying, where they didn't even know, right? And rumbling, like a fake simulator. And then they took that capsule. The big reveal was they took that capsule and rolled it out onto a sound stage in front of a live studio audience and had these people get out. And it's like these people thought that they were in space. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, no. It was all a reality show. Sorry. It's like, I mean, you can see it all on their face. They were elated. It's like, okay, big crowd cheering for him, but it's like, all this time I've been thinking I was training for space, and you guys just set me up to look like a complete idiot. Oh my God, it was so horrible.
And now you know how the original astronauts felt.
well, okay, that was
they were probably not in the know for a while until it was actually time to go, and then it's like, yeah, about that moon landing thing. Yeah. I'm afraid we're gonna have to do something else.
Which is why Capricorn 1 was surprisingly, I think, accurate in that sense, which was, yeah, you're absolutely right. I think the original Apollo astronauts, the Apollo 13 movie, was absolutely, for the 90% legit, Apollo 13. I'm not Apollo 13.
11.
The Right Stuff. The Right Stuff, which was in the early 1980s, which was the Apollo recruiting program. All these guys were absolute Boy Scouts. They were military. They were all
those pilots a lot, right? It's a lot about those high altitude pilots.
Yep, and Chuck Yeager, thank God he never got sucked into it. The greatest pilot in the world. And you're absolutely right. At the end, it's like, I'm sure it's like, all right, let's do this. We're gonna do the moon, and then you sit them down. It's like, so you're not gonna be doing this. Here's why. And I'm sure they gave him some great reasons. It's like, look, we don't have the tech. We don't have the tech to do it. You just die if we try to do it. Now,
we don't want to risk you. You're too valuable an asset, right? We're working on it, really.
Maybe they leveled with them, no play on words there, and said, yeah, there's no moon to go to. Because there's some, you're living in a big snow globe, and there's nothing you can do. However, we don't want to tell the general public that. You kind of understand, follow orders, everything thumbs up, and these guys became. But what made it bad for them, and I understand why most of them became alcoholics and just didn't want to do interviews, is because it's one thing to do that, right? One thing to fake it, but it's another thing to fake it and then get countless awards for the rest of your life for it, to where you're in a major parade going down in the middle of New York City, right, where there are thousands and thousands of people throwing confetti and everything, cheering your name for something you didn't do, right? And
then you're the pride of the nation. Everybody needs you to have done that, and you faked it, and you can never tell.
But heroes like that, they don't want awards for things they didn't earn, and these guys started to crumble, and they didn't do well. I mean, again, you saw the press conference like everybody else, where the first three, they're sitting in the press conference, and the press were more excited than they were, and you could tell it's like, it's not. But I'm sure they got it. I'm sure they understood. I'm sure that, but at the same time, it's tough to do a ribbon cutting ceremony at an elementary school or a high school that's named after you, and there are a bunch. You have to keep doing those once a year. And, it's like, oh, look, a new school in Indiana. It's named after me. That's great. It's really, really great. So, Anyway,
sorry, you want to finish?
Well, yeah. Let's kind of wind it down because there's a couple things I got to do.
Right.
What things do you?
I was thinking about like the whole moon landing, astronauts, and all that. I really think that they were never truly informed about what happened, because why would you tell them that it's all fake? You would set bad blood. These were morally upright men. That's how they were recruited. That's how they seemed during the training process. I think what they really how they got shoved was saying like, right, we were supposed to do that, but we really can't get it to work. There are unexpected developments that are going to make this basically impossible. But we have to claim this because of Russia, otherwise we'll lose the space race. And so we're going to have you're going to have to act like we are going to do this. And then maybe at some point we're actually going to be able to do this. Yeah. And then they never got back to him. And they basically were just like, now you're going to just have to uphold that act. And we'll get back to you. Maybe in like 100 years or something. And I think that is the disappointment. It wasn't like a disappointment of horror knowing like you're absolutely a faker, and you know it's fake and it can never be done. It's not that kind of look. They were just like shoved. They were just like let down. And I don't think they were ever informed that it could never be done. I don't think that the government were even in the range of having the knowledge that it was all fake. They were just always trying to test based on the parameters that were given to them, based on heliocentrism, top down. And nobody ever got to the point where they were really certain that it was impossible. I think they never got to that point.
You might have something there. I always thought it was interesting that that they also talked the Russians out of closing shop, which was the Russians, as you know, were always ahead of us, and the big space race. You could look it up. Type
rocket technology. Race. They were very capable of that.
Yeah, but
still
they realized that the studios could never be. There was going to be a continuity issue, which was, as you know, you could have two Hollywood studios that are a block apart from each other, and you will have continuity issues if you're working on the exact same project. When you have the Russians that are working on their fake program and we're working on our fake program, those two have to match up. And at some point, they contacted the Russians like, look, we have more money to spend on this. We're way more committed to this. You guys just fade away, which always bugged me because, it's a space race for a reason, right? It wasn't like the Americans get there and the Russians just quit. It'd be like, okay, we put 2 people, they put 4, we put a small base, they put a bigger base, and then Time Magazine runs a special called Has the Cold War Reached the Moon? And it never ever happens. It's never happened in the history of competition where the first guy gets there and the other people are like, that's it. Might as well just walk off the track. There's no reason to keep this going. And the Russians just kind of wilted away.
Right. You know what I think that might have happened is pure speculation, by the way. But what could have happened is that basically in their mutual research, they kind of figured out like, yeah, we can't do it. But then the Americans took it to the next step and said, okay, well, we're going to bluff that we can do it. And the Russians never went to that point like, yeah, we're going to bluff that. They just thought like, it's impossible. We'll try again later. Right?
Sure.
When we could do it. And the Americans like, oh no, we're going to do it right now. And it's all nonsense, but like, what are you going to do? Right?
Yeah.
I think that happened. They were they had the chutzpah to bluff it while the Russians like stood down because they just knew it wasn't possible and they weren't ready to bluff it.
Let me wind down with this because I always had fun when I went to other countries. Again, over here in America, we believe in the American space program because it's almost required, right?
Right, it's national pride, patriotism.
Yeah, in fact, do I have a little? I had a little American flag lying around here somewhere, where, but yeah, wave the American flag. It's like, go team, we're the best, right? But when I go to other countries and I'll ask them, I'll say, hey, people of random European country, why do you think the Americans went to the moon, right? We're required to. Why do you think the Americans? And everybody answers the exact same way, which is like, well, it was on your news stations, and your news would never lie about something that big. And
Nixon had a telephone call.
Yeah, and I stare.
How could that not be real?
I go, do you know the Americans at all? I go, look, we spin. We invented spin. We will if we can come up with a lie that makes us look better as a country, we're doing it, and we have done it, and we're going to keep doing it until somebody calls us out on it. And so you believing, and I get it. I've said this in a recent rant where I go, look, the Americans in the 1960s, because we were the only ones that were really untouched after World War II, with the exception of Hawaii. I go, we could do no wrong. We were inventing stuff. We were the big shining castle on the hill. And so somebody came up with a great idea. It's like, you know what? Let's tell people we went to the moon. Let's do, and like even the Romans didn't come up with this one. It's like, will people buy it? Why wouldn't they buy it? If anyone could have done it or had the credibility to do it in the 1960s, it would have been the Americans.
Right, because they were really technologically very developing. But by the way, I'd like to remind you that technically the Americans aren't the first ones to make a claim like this. The first ones were the Chinese. And I mean, like hundreds of years ago. Never heard of that story?
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right?
Well,
where they literally like shot a cannon, supposedly, with people towards the moon. Like, that's a story, and there's even like an old movie, black and white, that even depicts that. But I mean, there is an emperor, I think, once claimed to have done that. And hey, if the emperor says it's true, then, you know.
I will look that up online. There was actually a graphic novel to that effect years ago, where it was fictional, of course, where the Americans, like, you only had the technology, which was gunpowder and iron, which was if you put, you know, people inside some sort of enclosed little, it'd be spherical, you know, and fire it off at a, you know, some sort of escape velocity. Could you pull it off? I was like, well, yeah, except, you know, the G-forces. That probably wouldn't do too well.
Yeah, you'd get squished with.
Do you have any parting words before I go?
Yeah, man. I wish we could go another half hour, but I get it. You already gave me 1.5. It's been great. I love this conversation.
Good.
It's been epic. So thank you so much for being here.
To those, my parting words are this. Some I've kind of rehearsed over the years, which is, look, I'm not here to take everything I say with a grain of salt. I'm not here to convince you or even persuade you. I'm just here to put the idea in your head. You should do your own research and figure it out yourself, because that's why we have such a high retention rate. You know, we have Flat Earth has a 99% retention rate, because you're the one that ends. Well, I'm not even Morpheus giving you the pill. You find the pill yourself and you take it.
Right, and we're just telling you the pill is there.
Yeah, we're just telling you the pill's out there somewhere. You got to find it. Nice. So if you want to find me at all, just type into any search engine, Flat Earth Mark. Find the rabbit hole, go down it. You find other content creators, great, wonderful. There's so many people that are making good stuff out there. It's definitely not just me. I'm one of the oldest, that's for sure. But you'll get there eventually. So long live truth seekers.
Yes. Yeah, no, you're definitely, you do still do lots of live streams, and I do follow you. A lot of like updates about conventions. You really seem to be like the convention guy. In that sense.
I'm going to make another one here this afternoon for another one. We have a lot of regular meetups that are happening in the States and over in UK. In fact, I got to close down the Estonia one because that one is happening as we speak. I think they're finally wrapping up.
Ah, all right.
So, yeah.
Right, so yeah, putting the link of your YouTube channel in the chat so everybody can check you out if you didn't know Mark already, which I could barely imagine, because it's like, how can you not know Mark Sargent at this point?
There's always somebody. I
guess so. Yeah, there's.
I am not a government agent. If you like Eric Dubé and he keeps saying that I'm a government agent, fine. He's never proven it in 9 years, so whatever. That's fine.
He's just projecting. I mean, why the hell do you think he went to the East? No. No.
Some people just don't like sharing with others. It's fine. I don't care. Hey, look, he makes good content for the most part, so whatever. I'll live with it. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah. Great to have you here. Thank you so much for taking the invite and being part of the Night Owl Show number 10. It's awesome. And perfect. Yeah, you have a great weekend, dude.
You too.
Thanks.
Bye.
All right. See ya. Wow. I'm kind of sad that it's over. It was so fun. It was absolutely great. Classic Mark Sargent conversation never has to end, unless he just runs out of time. But I mean, there's so much that he can talk about, and yeah. I have to wind it down. Man. This is exactly the type of show that I wanted to have. These are the type of conversations that I wanted to have. This is just perfect. Absolutely great. So yeah, everybody make sure to Rogan's it up, right? Thumb it up, and also, well, you probably already have. Share the show. Let's check where we're at now. 37 watching. Surprised it's not more, but I'll bet there's going to be a whole bunch of people that are going to eventually watch the show, just like with David Weiss. So make sure to keep sharing it around, and yeah, it was great. I'm definitely going to watch this one back too. I think Mark knows so much about this stuff and just rolls off the tongue naturally. And yeah, I'm also kind of looking forward to Patricia Steer getting back, and like if she'll agree, I'll even have her on the Night Owl show. That would be awesome. But yeah, let's see if she actually comes back first. I mean, we'll see what happens. But yeah, this is has been absolute a blast. I hope that the sound was good. I never really got to double check with you guys. It's probably a little bit of an echo. It was with David Weiss as well. I hope it wasn't too distracting. I hope everything was perfectly intelligible. Did not see any complaints. No trolling either, which is great. Very happy about that. Oh yeah, now I forgot. Now I remember. There was one thing that I forgot about, like spacesuits as well. That we were talking about how they, like, how does that work? Why would they train in water? I also forgot to mention that, like, yeah, a spacesuit should actually completely blow up. As in, you go in a lower pressure situation, let alone a full vacuum. Like, the gases inside of the suit are gonna literally keep expanding and expanding until you blow up like a super tight balloon, and you wouldn't be able to move at all. It would be like you're stuck in a rigid plastic suit that's just completely stuck, because everything is gonna like blow up super tight, and then you couldn't maneuver. You would have to like exert so much strength to even be able to move your arms. You could break your arms trying to do that, and it would also cause significant risk of basically the entire suit just ripping open, right? And none of that is ever addressed. Like, yeah, you actually subject one of the spacesuits to a vacuum, you'll blow up like a balloon and just won't be able to maneuver at all. And the only real spacesuit design that could actually sort of work is if it wasn't flexible cloth and plastic like it was, but if it was like a mechanical, like a mobile, like a mobile human submarine, like where it's all mechanical arms where you could like move into it and then just with the hinges move around, and that way it wouldn't like blow up and you're just stuck in a completely immobile balloon, right? I reasoned this out. Like, if you want the actual spacesuit, you're gonna have to have basically like a steel framed system with like standard hinges that are not gonna blow up, that are not gonna tighten up, so that you could actually normally maneuver. And like the extra weight shouldn't be any issue because, well, you're in space, right? There is no gravity supposedly, so it wouldn't really matter. On the moon it would be maybe a bit more difficult, but any extra weight would just not hamper you as much. But yeah, they never went with that. They just like went with cloth suits and then completely ignored that would blow up like a balloon until you wouldn't be able to maneuver at all. Right. I forgot to mention about that. But I mean, the rest, pretty much everything has been said that I wanted to say. It's been great. Robotic suit. Oh, not necessarily like an exoskeleton. It would be like just a submarine that is human shaped, in which you can sit like an exosuit. And that because then the suit would be like a container. would be the air container. It would resist the pressure, but still allow you to, within, because of like how it's all connected, allow you to be able to maneuver, right? Right, fantastic show. Yeah, thanks. That was great. I'm still like all hyped up about it. It's absolutely great. So happy about it. Anyway, hope you all enjoyed it. Let me try to read some of the comments. It's getting dark out here, by the way. Gas rush, otherwise we be void of all gases. Yep. Yeah, with the lower pressure, gas would expand to try to fill it. Would never be able to because the volume is too much. It would just thin out enormously till it's almost non-existent. And then the lower pressure near the water would cause all the water to evaporate, turn into gas, and then also explode in all directions. And you would only be left with solid materials that won't evaporate under low pressure. And that's all there would be left. Right, so it's not just the gases, it would also be all the liquids. All the liquids that can evaporate. I mean, I think even mercury would just evaporate. Maybe it would freeze up, but probably not. I'm not sure what would happen with mercury, but I mean, all the water would all evaporate. Just start boiling until there's nothing left. Right, because water boils under lower pressure as well. The lowering of pressure significantly lowers the boiling temperature. Right, so you're all weighing in on the conversation. Great. So some baller responses in there are very typical. I don't really mind. I mean, it was a great conversation. I never really even got the chance to actually look at the chat. I posted a couple of links that Mark shared. Including Patricia Steer appearance on CBS. That was interesting. I don't think I've ever seen that before. Should actually take a look at that. Right, that first video for 2018, I actually posted that one on my channel. I uploaded that a whole long time ago. Like, it's one of the very, very few videos that I actually uploaded. But in that one, 2018, it was mentioned like, oh, Alex Jones and Flat Earth need to be downgraded with the algorithm. Like, it was a whole Congress hearing and all that. Hilarious. Right. Anyway, I think I'm gonna round out. It's 1 hour 41 minutes. I hope you really enjoyed all of it as much as I did. I mean, I'm still buzzing from it. I'm very happy that this happened and really hope to continue more of the Night Owl Show with great guests. If you are interested, you can contact me through the email. We interface through Skype, so yeah, you're gonna have to be able to get on Skype, and then yeah, maybe you too could be on the Early Bird Show, right? So right. So I'm rounding out. It's getting dark out there. It's not cloudy or anything. The moon should probably come out at some point. Right. Anyhow, thanks everyone for coming. I hope you liked this show. I thought it was great. Gonna have a really enjoyable night. And I'm gonna watch this one back and just see like what did we talk about? All the movie references and news references, and it was just epic. I mean, this is the type of thing, this is the show that I liked watching when he was doing this with Patricia Steer. It was just great. And now I'm one of those guys. So yeah, I'm very happy about it. And yeah, anyway, if you like the show, then please don't forget to Rogan's it up. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel and hit the bell notification so you know when I'm going live, which is normally 2 p.m. Amsterdam time every day on the Early Bird Show. And on occasion of the Night Owl Show, typically it will be 8 p.m. Amsterdam time in the evening, like today. Right. And yeah, don't forget to share the show. And if you want to support my efforts, then you can always donate to my PayPal or Patreon. Links are in the description box. You could really still use the support, especially in this time of the month. Right. So I'll be back tomorrow with Flat Earth Early Bird number 1946 on a Sunday, 2 p.m. Amsterdam time. Hope to see you all then. And yeah, until the next video, keep it flat.